Welcome. I'm your host, Henri Arslanian, and welcome to the Future of Money podcast. My goal with this podcast is very, very simple. It's to go deep in some of the biggest ideas, trends, and developments we're seeing in the field of crypto, and hopefully empower you with this information and then let you make your own decision on what their impact can be on the future of money and finance. And to do this, I invite each week one of the leading figures of the community to have a one-on-one conversation amongst aficionados and discuss some of these topics. Before I introduce my guest for today, please make sure to click subscribe and give a 5-star rating to the show if you enjoyed this podcast and if you think it's giving you value. That really helps more people discover the show, and it really helps with broadening the reach that we have. This podcast now is already being downloaded in over 100 countries, and our goal, as you guys know, is really to reach as many and educate and empower as many as we can on the future of money. My guest today is somebody that I really admire, that I really respect, and I'm so excited to have on the show, Mr. Paul Dawalibi. He is the CEO of Holodeck Media, and we're going to talk all about Holodeck Media afterwards, but he's also the host of the Business of Esports. If you like the crypto capsule, you like the future of money, and you think you're learning a lot of the crypto ecosystem, you got to subscribe to the Business of Esports. It's one of the among many other shows that he has that really covers topics like gaming, esports, and even he has podcasts on the Metaverse. So really, really worth following. We'll talk about all these topics today. One thing, by the way, you may not know about Paul, he's a very competitive athlete as well. He used to be a competitive swimmer. He got into skeet shooting, but also, believe it or not, he's a very good golfer with a handicap of 4. So here we go. I guess he's not only a gaming expert, but also a sports expert in the real time as well. Paul Dawalibi, great to have you on the Future of Money podcast today.
Henry, thank you so much for having me. Usually people are talking about how good I am at esports. It's very rare that people actually mention what we call meat sports. This is how gamers refer to anything that's not a video game. It's meat sports.
Meat sports. Well, I can tell you, we're going to talk about a lot of the convergence of all these esports, meat sports, and crypto, and all the kind of meats in there as well. But Paul, great to have you with us today. I think for a lot of our listeners, some of them may know you, some of them probably will discover you today. But I have to say, I've been such a big fan of your content. One thing for a lot of my listeners who probably don't know is, I've been producing now content on the topic for about 4 or 5 years now. Every week, I get about 1 to 2 people who reach out to me and say, Henry, I want to start creating content as well. I got so many of these requests. I even have a template email. I even made some videos that are on my YouTube channel of how I film my videos. And over the years, I've had literally hundreds of people try to start it, and they normally drop the ball after a month, 2 months, 3 months. Anybody who creates content can tell you it takes a lot of time. It's a lot of determination, consistency, and it's actually quite, you need to make a lot of sacrifices. But there's one person of all these hundreds that reached out that really followed through, put in the effort, the time, the energy, and the sacrifices that it takes. And that, sir, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Paul Dawalibi that we have today. Paul, I have to say big respect to everything you've done and how you built your social media and your content across all these different channels.
I mean, Henry, you're the guy I have to thank, though, right? The dirty secret of the Business of Esports is when I started it, I looked at your content, I'm like, wow, this is really good, right? And just completely knocked it off. So I'm the one who should be thanking you. I'm the one who should be saying all these nice things about you, because I was like, well, it's working for Henry. I mean, this is his podcast is a huge success. Let me just copy it completely. So, anyone who goes to listen to the Business of Esports, it's going to feel a little familiar.
Well, actually, what do you tell us about? I mean, Paul, I want you to tell us about your background, your background, how you got into this, hosting this podcast as well. But can you first tell us about your background, but also tell us about the shows that you have, especially the Business Esports and some of the other shows that you have that could be relevant to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my background, I started in tech. I was a computer science geek pretty much my whole life. But I realized that it was maybe more interesting to be on the investment side. And so I actually, I spent many, many years in venture capital, investing in early stage tech companies. And I actually went far back enough. I used to blog as a VC, and I went back to 2011. I saw I was blogging even in 2011 about gaming, because gaming has been my personal passion my entire life. Like, huge nerd, huge gamer. This was my, not just a hobby, but a huge passion. And in 2011 at the time, it just wasn't that cool to be talking about gaming. It's not something you told girls about. Like it's what you did on the Saturday night in your basement, and loved doing it, but it wasn't that mainstream cool. Fast forward to about 3 years ago, I had invested in a company in the entertainment space. It got me looking at what was going on in the entertainment space more broadly. And I had this aha moment of, wow, this gaming thing was like mainstream all of a sudden, right? Cool. You had Ninja going on the Today Show or Ellen or, all these big daytime talk shows. And it opened my eyes to this thing again that I thought was just my personal passion and hobby, and got me thinking about how I could turn this into a business. That was the genesis of the business of esports. It was, maybe we go build a media business right around gaming, because no one was really doing business content around gaming. There were a few sites talking about business deals in the gaming industry, but not that much. And so the genesis of business of esports was really, I saw white space around media and content for gamers and people interested in the gaming industry. So not just gamers, but people looking at it like brands or business people, marketing people outside of that. And that's who we serve primarily with business of esports. No, today Holodeck now has a multitude of shows, right? So it's not just business of esports. Yeah, we do a weekly podcast, but business of esports puts out like 4 or 5 piece podcasts a week, basically. Some that are live shows, some that are a bit shorter form content. We also have a podcast. I host a podcast called Meta Business, which is the business side of the metaverse. We have a podcast called Meta Woman, which is focused on women in gaming and women in the metaverse, and empowering them and highlighting them with great guests every week. And so it has expanded to include metaverse as a broader theme, but we believe gaming's at the core of metaverse, so it's still true to what we do.
Absolutely. Oh, all these topics we're going to go all in depth, but I think they're so important. Let's start actually about gaming, Paul, because obviously you talk about the gaming industry. For a lot of followers, obviously, many of them are gamers. Like you mentioned, I grew up playing Nintendo and playing Sega like everybody else, and playing Warcraft, and like I think many young guys and girls from our generation. But maybe for our audience, can you give us an overview of how big is the gaming industry? Because I think a lot of people probably don't appreciate how big this industry has become, and in many regards, how it's bigger than the traditional meat sports right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's massive. It dwarfs just about every other form of traditional entertainment. If you look at the industry as a whole, you're talking about a form of entertainment that's bigger than TV, movies, and music all put together. So if you take those 3 industries and combine them, it's still smaller from a dollar perspective than what gaming generates today. You're talking about 3 billion people on the planet today who would consider themselves a gamer. Now, that could be a very casual game you play on your phone. It's Candy Crush, it's Dots, it's something like that, to the most hardcore gamer with, the crazy gaming setup. That those 3 billion people though do consider themselves gamers, and that's the opportunity, right? That's the idea, is that, and the core of my thesis as an investor, as someone who's operating a business in the space, is gaming eventually takes over, consumes all of this other traditional media, that people will not consume music, movies, TV, traditional sports. Even industries like travel get consumed by gaming in some way. If we define gaming as the creation of virtual worlds, as these virtual worlds get more and more realistic, as they get more and more immersive, gaming becomes the number one form of entertainment, leisure time for human beings. And I love that you call this podcast the Future of Money podcast. I should have been smart enough to call my podcast the Future of Fun podcast, because that's what I believe gaming is. It really is the future of fun.
So do you believe, for example, when the evolution of gaming, we're talking about the future of fun, it's actually incredible data, what you're mentioning, that it's bigger than all, the movie industry and other industries put together, which is absolutely quite incredible. I mean, how do you see this? How do you see the evolution of the gaming industry? Where do you think we are now, and where do you think we'll be in 5 and 10 years when it comes from a gaming perspective?
I mean, it depends how pure you define gaming, Henry, right? Like if we're talking about, and if we're talking about dollar size, I think almost everyone massively underestimates. We talk today in hundreds of billions, but I truly believe that 5 or 10 years from now, gaming, we're going to be talking about it as an industry worth trillions. Like again, part of the core of my thesis as an operator and investor is that this is the industry that will see the most growth and create the most wealth over the next 5 to 10 years than anything else, maybe save healthcare or things like that, right? And so how big could it get? I mean, the sky's the limit. Again, if we define gaming very broadly as the creation of virtual worlds, which today someone may call metaverse, right? You could be talking about an industry that consumes music, movies, and TV, because today the average 12-year-old who's playing Fortnite, he's actually consuming music and movies and TV inside of Fortnite, right? These mediums are converging, but the attention is going to the games. They're not sitting and watching a movie on Netflix. But if there's something premiering in Fortnite, they'll sit and watch it with their friends in Fortnite. And so the gaming platforms, the Fortnites, the Robloxes, the Minecrafts of the world, this is where all the attention is shifting. And so the growth is going to be massive, because today we're seeing, I don't even think we're seeing, like people think we're at maximum hype cycle. The reality is we haven't even hit the major inflection point yet, because what hasn't happened yet is the demographic aging up of all these kids who grew up with gaming as core to their childhood, right? Like, yeah, you and I played Nintendo, but it may have been half an hour a day, and our parents probably told us to put it down because it wasn't good for us. Today, you have kids spending, 4 or 5 hours a day in Fortnite, and no one's questioning it because they're looking at, Ninja going, well, that guy made $30 million playing Fortnite. And the parents are putting them in like schools to tutor them to get better at Fortnite. And so this demographic and generational shift hasn't happened yet. And that's where I think we're going to see this massive inflection point, when all the 12-year-olds today start to have disposable income of their own and they're spending it on gaming.
I think that's a key point, right? The size of the wallet right now, again, teenagers don't have the same as these the 30, 40-year-olds now that are gamers and have the ability to spend, especially if it's budget that would go traditionally to movies or other types of entertainment is going to go into gaming as well. Actually, before, and you talk about my mother, I know my mother is probably my biggest fan. She listens to all
and
my
mine
episodes,
too.
by
She
the way.
actually listens to all of ours too, I know.
There you go. So, and you're right. At a time, it was like, you had to do your homework to go play, Nintendo or, and do this and that. Whereas now, actually, it's become a business. And actually, on that point, Paul, maybe for our audience as well, can you elaborate more? I think maybe if you can share with our listeners, for example, a lot of some esports competitions, from World of Warcraft, Fortnite, and some of the more gaming type activities. How big are these prizes? How many people are attending these? I saw some recent footage of stadiums being full of people watching gaming shows. Recently on your podcast, you were even talking about the esports bars, for example. I'd love to, if you can share with our audience, how big this is becoming on the competitive level.
Yeah, so I like to think of the competitive side of gaming, what we call esports, right? Proper esports, as the tip of the iceberg, right? We see it's what's the most visible. It's when people talk about gaming. It's what makes all the news. It's what you see on NBC or CBS. Reality is the bigger gaming opportunity is all the ice under the water, but the iceberg is the sexy part that everyone talks about. Now, that piece alone, esports, today, you're seeing prize pools in the tens of millions of dollars for big tournaments. So you have probably the two biggest would have been the Fortnite World Cup a few years ago, which was a $40 million prize pool, and the Dota 2 International, which is probably on a yearly basis the biggest prize pool consistently. And there it varies anywhere between, I think the latest one's almost $40 million in terms of the total prize pool. And winners, there will walk away with checks of, $4 or $5 million each. So because they're teams. So this is definitely something where you can make a serious living if you're a top competitive player. In terms of audience, I mean, esports proper, again, is larger than literally all the other traditional sports major tournaments, right? If you look at the Super Bowl or the NBA Finals or the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs or any of the big meat sports kind of tournaments and finals, compared to something like League of Legends, where their finals easily pull 100 million viewers, easily, right? And if you believe all the Chinese numbers, which sometimes there's a little question in terms of how they measure some of their numbers. Sometimes I've seen numbers twice that size. So you're talking about audiences that are massive internationally. That's, I think, the key. Whereas a lot of traditional meat sports are very geographically limited, right? And NFL football outside of the US, no one really cares about it. But League of Legends, there's a global audience for that. It's global, it's young, they're digital savvy. So they're watching on their computers, they're watching on their phones, it's being streamed live. There's casters, the production quality is amazing. Now, yes, they fill stadiums, so you can absolutely go to any of these big tournaments, pre-COVID and now post-COVID, absolutely. They'll fill the big stadium here in Brooklyn, which, I don't know, 50,000, 60,000 people. But it's the audience online that really is what matters.
And it's very, very interesting. I think the fact that it's international audience is a big deal, right? I'm actually right now in Dubai. It's actually, for those watching this on YouTube, I'm literally in the hotel business lounge recording this. But basically, what's interesting, when you look at the Super Bowl that happened a couple of weeks ago, and there's Tom Brady and there's massive millions of dollars going into sponsorship. But again, it's a very, like you said, a US audience. Here I was talking to my taxi driver today who was telling me about cricket. And as a guy like you who grew up in Montreal, I don't even know how the rules of cricket work. And he was telling me about what's happening, and I have no idea what he's talking about. It really shows you how a lot of these sports are still very concentrated. But like you said, League of Legends, I mean, when I used to live in China, in Hong Kong, I mean, we used to see this. It's very, very common, right? So it's a very interesting point on that side. One thing I want to touch upon, Paul, you just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, you're talking about metaverses as virtual ecosystems, right? Virtual worlds. So when somebody like you, who's been in the gaming scene as an investor, as an operator, you see the whole hype around the metaverse right now. What's your view on it? Do you think the real metaverse is what we're seeing in gaming ecosystems right now? Is it a hype what we're seeing with this new blockchain-based metaverses? Very keen to get your view of, are these tools going to come together? Or is metaverse, blockchain-based metaverses the natural evolution of it, or is it something else?
Metaverse is an interesting topic altogether. In the question of life cycle, I've been now, an investor in tech or an operator in tech for the last, 25 years, basically 25 years. And what I've noticed, or at least what I've learned, is tech life cycles. And this is tech, right? Gaming is a form of tech, metaverse. It's all underlying tech in some way. They all follow a similar life cycle, like almost to the T, right? The life cycle of any new technology is almost the same. So you've got very early adopters who are very passionate about it, but there's almost no business around it. Then you get these massive hype cycles, which I think where we're at today around metaverse, right? Everyone's talking about metaverse. And then that cools off a little bit. And the real work starts around building what eventually becomes the solution that the mainstream adopts, right? And I don't think we're there yet. Now, in an ideal world, and I like to operate in ideal worlds, the metaverse is truly the next evolution of the internet, in the sense that it's a set of standards, right? No one today operates or controls the internet completely. The same way I hope no one will control, no gaming company especially will control any one metaverse completely. And so the hope, in my mind, is how do we create a set of standards so that people can build metaverses that are interoperable. And on the whole, we can call that capital T, capital M, the metaverse. And this is where I think crypto and blockchain and some of these technologies play a key role in that interoperability, right? In that ability to create layers that can be made common across metaverses. So if Roblox is creating their own metaverse and Fortnite's creating their own metaverse, well, if we want to connect those two, you need payment systems that are compatible. You need ownership systems that are compatible. You need, right, a layer of technology that makes these things be able to talk to each other. And so from a technology standpoint, I think it's critical. Now, do I think anyone today has solved all these problems and we're ready to sort of roll out the metaverse that we see in a movie like Ready Player One or, The Matrix, or like any of these kind of sci-fi versions of the metaverse? No, there are still some technology hurdles.
This podcast is brought to you by Bullish. Bullish is a powerful new exchange for digital assets that offers deep liquidity, automated market making, and state-of-the-art security. Follow Bullish on Twitter or visit bullish.com to learn more. Please note that digital assets and cryptocurrencies are high-risk products. Consult your professional advisor before dealing in them. Bullish's services are available in select locations only and not to U.S. persons. Visit bullish.com for important information and risk warnings. So when, as a gamer like yourself, when you look at some of the metaverses that are, in the media today, from Decentraland to Sandbox and many others are popping up, what's your view on it? Do you think they're still at the very early stages? Do you think the user experience is good or not good enough? Or do you think, again, there's this interoperability problems you think there are still an obstacle? Like, what's your view when you look at it from a traditional gaming perspective?
Sandbox and Decentraland specifically are interesting because they're they serve a purpose in the life cycle of this technology or of this movement, in that they serve the purpose of making the idea of a metaverse accessible and open to people who may not understand it. Right? Like if I want to explain to someone what a metaverse is, I can take them into Decentraland. I can show them, hey, look, there's virtual versions of the Gucci store here or things like that, right? Like it allows people to conceptualize in a very real way what this future could look like. Having said that, I think the problem with Decentraland or Sandbox is there's no real reason for people to use them today, right? There's no, other than the speculation around them and, buying land in the hopes that it's going to go up in value. There's no real reason to go into Decentraland today. We on the Meta Business podcast, we talked a little bit about Metaverse Fashion Week, and that was kind of cool. Maybe a reason to go in there. I think at the core, the reason people will go into any metaverse will be to play a game, right? To have fun, to enjoy themselves, to relax, to escape reality and derive pleasure from it. And Decentraland, Sandbox, none of these metaverses are there yet. It's why I think the early stages of metaverse are more likely to evolve from games first than from these, call it, more dedicated platforms. Like I think Roblox or Fortnite or Minecraft are more likely to evolve into metaverses than Decentraland or Sandbox are.
And actually, on this point, from a gaming perspective, what is more important? Obviously, one is it really the user experience, how fun the game is, or some of the attributes that we in the crypto community will often talk about, right? The fact that you can hold your assets, the fact that it's really decentralized and nobody controls it. What's more important, the fact that the user experience and the funness of the game, or the fact that the users can hold their assets and operate in a decentralized way?
I mean, this is such we could probably spend an hour just on this. I mean, I think you're alluding on one hand to sort of play to earn models, right? Which is the biggest topic, at least at the intersection of crypto and gaming today. It's the one I get asked about most often. I think what the play to earn crowd misses is I don't think truly any gamer plays to earn. And I don't think any gamer wants to play to earn, right? People play to have fun. People play to escape. And earning in some ways ruins the game. And part of my belief is that anyone who's focused on an economy, a business model, a token, this, like anything that's not the game itself, has sort of missed the mark. And all the crypto people I talk to want to reach gamers, right? Everyone believes Axie Infinity, could be the one, but it's still relatively small, right? You're talking a couple million players in a world where, Fortnite or PUBG, these games have hundreds of millions of players. So how do you build a play to earn game that reaches the masses? No one has done that yet. And I think the reason no one has done that yet is because everyone's so focused on the earn, as if this is something we need to shove down the throats of gamers. The reality is gamers want to have fun. And if the games aren't fun, nothing else matters. And so it has to start with a fun game first. It has to start with, why are people here? And I think play to earn, for the most part, no one's going to be talking about this 3 years from now. This is not the end goal, right? And I think in some ways, trying to squeeze earning into gaming creates artificial boundaries that makes the games not fun, right? Because for play to earn to work, they fundamentally have to be some version of inverted pyramid schemes, basically, right? Like there are some small number of people who put money in, and then there's a large number of people who play and get a bit of money out. And forcing that in a game can make it not fun. Having said that, I think there are definitely benefits to the second question you asked me, which is ownership, right? I think that's the more interesting view here, or at least take on intersection of gaming and crypto, because ownership is something that gamers have always been comfortable with, right? I did the same quest 1,000 times in World of Warcraft to get one mount, one tiger I could ride because it looked cool to all the other players. Now, that tiger exists only in World of Warcraft. I can't use it anywhere else. I can't really do anything with it. I I definitely see a market for ownership that allows me to take items from one game to another, that allows me to buy and sell items as I see fit without the walled gardens of the publishers, which is a big problem. The question is, how do you convince publishers that this is good for them? I mean, there's all kinds of challenges. I think where we fall flat as an industry is everyone struggles to convince gamers why they need this, right? And when they don't convince them, this is especially common in play to earn. Gamers don't jump on board, right? Everyone sort of pushes back, and then the play to earn folks say, "Well, it's because you don't get it." And I think that's such a cop out, right? Like, we have to explain to gamers why they should care, why this is good for them, why it makes the experience better in some way. No one has sort of succeeded there. And in terms of the ownership, have to convince the publishers, hey, if you make all of your items available as NFTs or whatever, that's something that's interoperable that you can take outside of the game that you can buy and sell, how is this good for you, Mr. Publisher? Because today they control those walled gardens, right? They have total control over the items, whether people can buy or sell them. And so there has to be some sales pitch to those people in terms of why this is better for them.
But don't you think that's a natural evolution? For example, in the field of finance, we had that initially with the banks initially, being very opposed to fintech, and then they gradually opened up. They were opposed to crypto, and then they gradually opened up. Do you think we'll see the same thing with the gaming companies or the publishers, as you call them, will eventually realize actually the pie gets bigger if we let users, swap their line that they won in a tiger, and bring it to another game from that perspective? Do you think that's what's going to happen? And are you seeing some elements of that already happening?
Yeah, I think that's super insightful, Henry. Like, I absolutely believe it follows the same path. The problem is there's not enough of, like, the gamers aren't asking for it today. And so I think that sales pitch has to happen to the gamers. We need to convince gamers, why are you better off playing games that have these features, these underlying technologies? I mean, I've joked with you, right? No one tells a gamer, hey, this is a C++ game, or this is a Java game, right? Like, no gamers don't care what underlying technologies underpin their games. What they care about is the game fun, and what does the game let me do that's cool? And so if we can convince them, hey, these games are way better, way more fun, way better, more immersive, and you're, that thing that you spent 1,000 hours earning, you could go take it to this other game. I guarantee you the gamers will rise up, will play the game, and the developers will have to embrace it. So absolutely, but it starts with the gamers. If you can't reach that core 100 or 200 million gamers, right, who play Fortnite every day or Roblox every day or Minecraft every day, if you can't reach those people, it will always stay niche. It will always be sort of Axie Infinity kind of niche.
So I have two questions on this point. So do you think today is the crypto community doing a good job in reaching out to these gamers? And if not, what else can they do to properly reach this audience?
I mean, gamers are probably the trickiest audience in the world to reach, but also the most lucrative. And so this goes hand in hand, I think, right? Because if they were easy, everyone would be going after them. But there's a subtlety to gamers where if they don't feel like you're one of them, they reject you. If they don't feel, and I hate using this word, if they don't feel like you're authentic, they reject you. If they feel like they're being pandered to, they reject you. And so the ability to be accepted by that group is a really fine line you have to walk. It takes someone who understands not only the sales pitch, but also the mindset of the gamer. And I think crypto people are doing a horrible job today, like really maybe the worst job of any industry trying to reach gamers. Because again, it always falls back on, if you don't get it, like if you're not doing it, it's because you don't get it. And no one, I mean, forget about gamers. No one likes being told that, right? Like Ubisoft announced this big sort of crypto thing with Quartz, right? Where they're going to have NFTs in games. The gamer said, we don't want this. Like, you can, shove it where where it doesn't shine. And the pushback was, well, you guys don't get it. Well, no, I mean, like, explain to me why this is good for me. Why, when I'm playing Rainbow Six, which is a Ubisoft game, why is it all of a sudden better now that there's NFTs in the game? Explain to me how, for a gamer, this is going to make the experience better, or the $60 game that I paid for now a better value, or something. Give me something. And I think it can't be a crypto person selling crypto to the gamers. It's got to be a gamer selling crypto to the gamers. if that makes sense.
But at the same time, there's an incredible overlap between the number of gamers and, let's say, crypto aficionados. I forgot the data, but there's the overlap of percentage between these two groups is actually quite high. So isn't it surprising then? What is the problem then that we are not seeing more, let's say, openness from the gaming community towards crypto or towards the kind of benefits that the crypto community is pitching to the gaming community?
Well, it's long been debunked that if you build it, they will come. Like, that just doesn't work, right? Everyone needs to be sold. So if you may be an enthusiast of both, if you want to convince me to go play this game or convince me to go use this crypto platform or whatever the sales, like, you still need to sell me and you still need to outline what's in it for me and the benefits to me. That's what the crypto world is getting right. And again, I'm like, I want to emphasize it because the more I think about it, the more I think it's true. No one has really tried to talk to the other side with an insider, right? Like, no one's really selling crypto to gamers, but using gamers to do the sales pitch. No one's really selling gaming to the crypto side, but using crypto people as the mouthpiece, right? It's how do we get the Trojan horse behind the enemy walls so that that you can then make the sales pitch. But you're right, there's a lot of overlap. I think I saw a stat that almost half of people, half of gamers would give up their bank accounts for crypto wallets if given the chance, right? That's a huge, we're not talking a small opportunity. We're talking about maybe the biggest customer acquisition opportunity in the history of customer acquisition opportunities for crypto companies to go after the hundreds of millions of gamers who are all young, digital savvy, globally oriented, right? Like, all the checkboxes for the perfect crypto customer are right there. But how do you talk to those people and talk to them in their language and use a mouthpiece that they won't immediately just reject? I mean, I love you, Henry, but the tie, right, for a lot of gamers is going to put them off.
It's been my signature piece of clothing for after all these years. But you raise a very good point, because I think we've had this problem in the crypto ecosystem as well, right? Where unless you can show this authenticity that you actually you get it. For example, in the early days of crypto ecosystem, many people, bankers or other people would kind of contradict and try to destroy the values of crypto. And the argument would be the same, would be, you're not getting it, there's this and that. So I think it's very, very interesting what's happening from that perspective. But actually, I want to touch on another thing you just mentioned, Paul, but I think it's very interesting is, do you believe play to earn models will be here to stay? I mean, you were just mentioning that you believe a lot of them will not work because they're focusing on the earn and not on the play side. But for example, from a gaming perspective, when you look at Axie Infinity today, for example, do you think the average Fortnite player, the WoW, World of Warcraft player, when they look at Axie Infinity, they're going to like that game, or they're just going to be disgusted by it or just walk away?
I mean, I haven't seen today any play to earn game that's a good game. Let's put it that way. And I think the numbers bear that out, right? Even the biggest Axie Infinity only has 2 million players. I think play to earn, and I said, look, in 3 years, no one's going to be talking about it. Play to earn will exist, but I think it will exist in certain geographies where it makes the most sense. So I think in a lot of developing countries where, making an extra dollar or two a day has a significant impact on your life, I think the Axie Infinities of the world will continue to exist there. And frankly, today, that's where most of them do exist, right? Like, you don't get a lot of Axie Infinity players in North America, but you do get it in more developing countries. And so play to earn, I think, has a place, just not in the mainstream conversation and not at any scale that I think will make a difference in the industry. Now, I've heard people make the argument, well, what if it's play and earn? Or what if it's play to own instead of play to earn? And I sort of hate these conversations because they distract from the real issue. It's not about whether we put a to or an and. It's not if it's earn or own or, is it what particular word do we put there? This distracts from the real conversation of, is the game fun? Do people want to play the game? And if they're playing the game, whatever other benefit you're trying to sell them on, do they care about it? Right? Because yes, there is a world where if you recreated World of Warcraft piece by piece, it's the same exact game, but the only difference is the gold I earn in World of Warcraft, I can go and sell it on an exchange for real dollars or, things like that. I could probably believe that you would convince some players that that's a better version of WoW. So it's not like it's impossible to make these games better with crypto. It's just most of them start from a place of, okay, we're crypto. Let's figure out the token, the this, the that, the guilds, the, like this massive ecosystems. And I hear the pitch and we're 15 minutes in and I still don't know what the game's about, right? Or like, what's the game? And is it fun? Is it? And so like all of the conversations around play to earn, play and earn, play to own, play and own, play to this, distract from the let's make a great game. And then how can we use technology to either enhance the experience of the game after the fact, or how can we use the technology to enhance the monetization without affecting the fun of the game?
It's a very good point. And I think you mentioned in one of your recent shows, Paul, that it's actually people underestimate how difficult it is to make a good and fun game. We all talk about these different ecosystems of metaverses, but I mean, like, we have to face it today. A lot of the metaverse ecosystems we interact with are quite clunky. User experience is not there yet. I think that's a very insightful point you bring up. It's not easy making a fun game, right, Paul? Yeah.
It's not. You have AAA studios, companies with thousands of developers, right? Budgets in the hundreds of millions of dollars. It takes them years to make games. Like Cyberpunk's a perfect example. Cyberpunk 2077 is a game that people have been looking forward to for literally 7 years. It was announced 7 years ago. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars developing the game, right? Hundreds of developers. The game came out and it was a huge flop. It wasn't fun. No one wanted to play the game, right? This happens. You're talking about a game fundamentally is art, and art is subjective, and yes, if you succeed, if the game's fun, Fortnite, Minecraft, these are cash minting machines, but this is not like, we can't just gloss over that fact. Like, we'll make a fun game and then like, as if like that's the easy part. And now let me tell you about the 15 minutes about how we're integrating a token or something like that, right? Like, you glossed over the part that's really hard.
Absolutely. It's very, very interesting, the dynamic. But, I really believe the opportunity of gaming and crypto coming together, it's exactly the same discussions we used to have a couple of years ago with, like I mentioned, with banks, for example, right? You're having these two worlds are kind of speaking a different language, but at one point, like they're going to come together, right? And it's however we're able to bring this together, I think will be very, very important. And actually on that point, Paul, and after this, I think it'll be, we're getting to the end of the show, but what do you think is going to be the $1 billion use case, right? What is, you think, the big catalyst that's going to bring the crypto community and the gaming ecosystem together? Many of us thought a couple of years ago was going to be Facebook's Libra. Many more recently thought it was going to be the rise of other like metaverse ecosystems. What do you think from your perspective is what is going to bring the crypto ecosystem and the gaming ecosystem together to reach a broader audience, not only for the gaming world but also the crypto world?
I mean, this is a tough one. This is a tough question to answer, Henry. If I knew this with like 100% certainty, I'd probably be building that because I would argue that's probably $1 trillion opportunity, not $1 billion opportunity. Ownership is probably the one we're closest to. It's kind of a cop-out answer, but like, I think the one thing that gamers have hated for a long time, and this is where it's like, how do we tap into what gamers don't like and make it better in some way as sort of the beachhead, right? Like, how do we land on gamers' shores here and start to get crypto infiltrated, in the trenches and things like that? And I think the beachhead is, let's start with things that have frustrated gamers for a very long time. And one of those things is almost every game development company has shut down most third-party marketplaces for in-game items. So for example, I used to play a ton of Counter-Strike, right? I own skins that are incredibly rare in Counter-Strike. I think at one point my Counter-Strike inventory was worth something like $300,000. Okay. And what Valve realized is a lot of these skins were being traded on third-party sites, right? You could go to a site, essentially upload your skin and sell it to someone who could then have it in their game. And they said, well, why are we doing this? We'd rather people buy and sell on Steam, which is their own platform, because they take a cut of every transaction. And so they used, actually, they were clever. They used anti-gambling laws to make the case that the trading and buying and selling of skins allowed kids to gamble, basically. And because there are some sites that allowed kids to use skins to essentially gamble. So they used this loophole to shut down all the third-party sites that allowed the buying and selling and trading of skins. Now, as a consumer, as a gamer, that's bad for me, right? Now the value of my skins has gone down, because there's only one marketplace for them. So I absolutely think there's a case to be made if you can break those walled gardens of the publishers by integrating tools like this, right? By making the buying and selling of in-game items open and free and sort of free market. This is something that I think every gamer will get on board with. And then it's not play to earn or play and earn or play to any of these things. It's like I play and then I can decide what I want to do with my items, right? There's no one telling me what I can or can't do. And so that's the beachhead. Is that the $1 trillion idea? Probably not. But I don't have a good answer for you for that $1 trillion idea because I don't know yet. I agree with you. It's coming, and I know someone will figure it out. And it makes total sense in the metaverse to have crypto as a common payment system, right? So is that the $1 trillion idea? I don't know, but it's another beachhead.
This episode is powered by Celsius, your home for crypto. With Celsius, you can easily buy, swap, earn, borrow, and send crypto all in one app with zero fees and the best rates in the industry. Weekly rewards of up to 17% APY in crypto-backed loans starting at just 1% APR with no origination fees. You can even swap coins in-app without paying gas fees or worrying about slippage. And if you need help, you can call them and get live support from an actual human. Visit the link in the description to get started today. You know, what I think when I reflect about the coming together of the gaming and the crypto ecosystem is the fact that it's international. If you think about, like you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, right? It's really one of the truly global sports. Yeah, we're talking about the World Cup, and the Olympics, but really gaming is the one that speaks the same language, literally, And I think that's really incredible. And for that, you need kind of a global payment system or global ecosystem that brings it together. I think it needs to be crypto, and it's going to be very, very interesting to watch over the coming years on this perspective. I remain extremely bullish between the combination of both. And I think for a lot of young people, like you mentioned at the beginning, right now, gaming is a genuine career opportunity. And, when I think about the number of kids grew up, I remember many of my friends wanted to be sports agents, or do this, but actually the ecosystem for gaming and esports and all this kind of ecosystem is so much bigger. And that entire ecosystem that to service it needs to be built, right? So I think it's absolutely fascinating how much upside there is on that perspective.
And let's not I also don't want to make it seem like that's not that interesting of an opportunity. Like we're talking about if the metaverse happens the way we all think it's going to happen, right? We're talking about a massive attention shift. People are going to spend hours of their day in these virtual worlds, right? They will be consumers in these virtual worlds. They'll be buying goods and services. They'll be spending money. They'll be operating businesses, right? There's an entire generation that's never written a check. You think like older financial systems apply to this all digital virtual world? No way. And so I don't want to understate how massive of an opportunity is for crypto to just be that payment layer for the hundreds of millions, if not billions of people who are going to interact in the metaverse and do commerce there. That I don't want to understate that. It's maybe less sexy than play to earn and tokens and NFTs. It's just a payment system, but we could be thinking about a financial system for the metaverse, again, worth trillions.
Absolutely. I think there's no doubt about that. But Paul, we got to stop here. We can go on a show for an hour. My producer, Melania, is making me signals in the back, messages that we need to cut it short. We definitely need to talk about this topic again because it's so important. And one point you mentioned at the end is, when I give these presentations, keynotes to banks and other financial services firms about the potential metaverse, I always tell them, let's not forget, we talk about the metaverse, the sexy things you're seeing right now that is decentralized, but there's a gaming ecosystem that is so huge right now that it's probably going to be the entry point, as in the same way we have cryptocurrencies, but we started with centralized exchanges where people are buying and selling crypto assets before interacting with DeFi. I think we're definitely going to have the same thing in the gaming ecosystem. And like you said, the generational shift is going to happen where those young kids that are right now, watching YouTube, they're on Twitch, and they're playing all these different games. As they're making money now, they're working class professionals, and they have bigger wallets. This is going to be tremendous opportunity. Paul, before we leave, I'm like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I just landed here in Dubai from New York, and my bell is actually in my room downstairs, and the kids are sleeping. So we're going to improvise today. It's going to be my cup and my knife that I just took on the business lounge here, and we're going to go through. I'm going to ask you quick questions, and I need 1 or 2 word answers. Paul, are you ready?
Yeah. Yes.
Here we go. What is your favorite game of all time? favorite game, online game of all time?
Quake 3.
Oh yeah, here we go. What in 5 years? What do you think is going to be the biggest metaverse community? Is it centralized games like Fortnite, Roblox, tech platforms like Meta, or decentralized communities like Decentraland or Sandbox?
Definitely the games.
Okay,
So
there we go.
and between Roblox, Fortnite, and Minecraft, I say Roblox.
Interesting. What is that? Like 10 seconds. Why Roblox?
They've had the most success in aging up, so carrying players through higher age groups. They're capturing that young generation better than anyone else. Huge growth, platform open to user-generated content also, which Fortnite and the other platforms don't have as much. Minecraft obviously does, but not Fortnite. So, or not as much. And so for those reasons, Roblox.
We need to do another show, really talk about these elements. I think there's so much connectivity with crypto as well. Next question. What is the best game ever made in your opinion? Ever made?
World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I'll probably say the same. Paul, if you're not in the gaming space, what other business would you be in?
That's a good question. I mean, I'd be doing tech of some sort. I mean, I can't not be around tech. So,
Arcades, best arcade game ever.
best arcade game ever, Street Fighter.
Yeah, of course. By the way, for those who don't know, Paul in his office has many of these arcade games lying there. I'm sure your wife appreciates those that they're not at home,
Yeah.
but in your
They're
office.
not at the house.
Next one. I know you're a big car fan. Favorite car of all times? You're a big driving fan.
Porsche 911 GT3.
There we go. If you could launch a new startup and you have the choice between these 4 co-founders, Vitalik Buterin of Ethereum, Richard Branson, Mark Zuckerberg, or Kim Kardashian, which one do you pick?
Today?
Yep.
Kim Kardashian.
Why is that?
Captive audience is so valuable. You can get people to buy anything you want. I mean, if you have people follow you and trust you,
Exactly.
those millions and millions of followers are valuable.
So on that point, who's the influencer personality you admire the most, you think has really its game together from a content perspective?
I mean, I want to say Elon Musk. He's not a content creator, but like, it also helps when you're worth a couple $100 billion that you can say anything you want. But that's the dream as a content creator, to be able to say anything you want and not worry about what people will think.
Probably can have another episode on his recent acquisition of Twitter shares.
That's it.
And Paul Dawalibi, thanks for having you with us today. The last question. Paul, if you could have dinner with one person, lunch or dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would you have lunch or dinner with?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, why is that?
Interesting historical figure, U.S. president, sort of a man's man, like to, hunt and things like that. So interesting dinner conversation, and also just like an inspirational guy. I think a lot to learn from him. Mr.
Paul the Prophet Dawalibi. So we didn't even talk about your nickname, how you got the Paul the Prophet. I think we'll leave that for another show. Paul, before we leave you, how can people find you? If people want to learn more about Metaverse, your show Meta Business, the business of esports, how you always say, if it's from you're bringing from the Metaverse to the boardroom, how can people find you?
Thebusinessofesports.com. All the Business of Esports content is there. So thebusinessofesports.com. They can also follow at Biz Esports on Twitter, Business of Esports on YouTube, and obviously subscribe to our podcast. So Business of Esports, anywhere you find podcasts. So Spotify, Apple, Google, and Meta Business Podcast is the other one I co-host. So definitely go check that out.
Awesome. Paul, thanks for being with us today. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Hope this was as interesting and exciting for you as it was for me. If you like the show, make sure please to give a 5-star rating. It really, really helps with more people discovering the show. Again, thank you very much. If you want to stay on top of the latest developments on crypto and the future of money, make sure again to follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter, especially for my weekly Crypto Capsule show, where I summarize the global developments you need to know in less than 60 seconds. And also make sure to follow me on my newsletters now. They're coming out 2-3 times a week, both on LinkedIn and Review, called The Future of Money. And also, you're looking for a gift idea for this, for the Easter coming up, other holidays. Make sure to check out my latest course on Udemy called Introduction to Bitcoin and Crypto Assets, where I cover in 90 minutes all the latest global trends that you need to know on topics like Bitcoin, Ethereum, stablecoins, DeFi, CBDCs, Web3, Metaverse, and many, many, many other topics as well. Thank you very much for everybody at home for joining us today. Thank you, Paul, again for coming with us on air today for the Future of Money podcast. And see you all next time.